Hello everyone, welcome back to another Star Wars Destiny video. Today Fantasy Flight released another spoiler article for Legacies, this time focusing all on red cards. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the cards, going to let you know what I think of them. A lot of these cards are pretty cool, so let's just start off here. First up, we have Kallus, Agent of the Empire from Star Wars Rebels, 12 health, 14 or 18 points depending on how you want to run him. 1 range damage, 2 range damage, 1 melee damage, 3 melee damage for a resource and blank, and then he has a power action. Turn this die showing range damage to a side showing melee damage or vice versa. Use each power action only once per round. So essentially you get a free focus. Like if you have a bunch of range damage showing, and you have the die, one of his dice is on melee, you can flip it to range, or if you have a bunch of range damage with a melee, you can flip it to, you can basically focus it once per round, which is pretty cool. So again, 4 damage sides, which is pretty nice. One of them is a resource costed side, but 3 for 1 is still pretty good. Good health at 12. I think the points are pretty good, so 14, 18 seems pretty balanced. You compare him with another character that costs 12. I could definitely see him fitting in with a lot of different builds, especially with his ability to kind of focus one of his dice or one of his character dice to a side that you might need from your other character. So if you roll him out and he rolls melee, your other character rolls out a bunch of range damage. You can then use that power action to focus one of those other damage to the range. So if he rolls out melee, you can flip it to range. If he rolls out range, you can flip it to melee. Pretty cool card overall. Definitely want to check him out. Pretty thematic ability as well, because in the show he definitely uses both ranged weapons as well as like the melee staff that Zeb also uses. So that is Kallus, Agent of the Empire. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Tarkin, Grand Moff, 11 health, 13 or 16 points, legendary. 2 indirect damage, 1 focus, 2 discard, resource blank, and another power action. So power action, remove 2 of your dice showing the same symbol to deal 4 indirect damage to an opponent. So if you have like a die that you can't use, for example, let's say your opponent, you rolled disrupt on a couple other dice and your opponent is out of resources, you can use that power action, remove those 2 disrupt dice to deal 4 indirect damage. Pretty cool ability there. Or especially if your opponent has, like, let's say, like no cards in hand and they have discard, you can remove those discard dice to do 4 damage or remove 2 focuses. I imagine it'll let you, not sure if it'll let you remove blanks, but that'd be pretty cool. So let's say you roll a bunch of blanks, use this power action, remove 2 of those blanks, and then deal 4 indirect damage. Points are good, so you got 13, 16. I see him being pretty good at either, I mean, 1 or 2 dice. 2 dice, you're just going to be rolling probably tons and tons of focus. He's got that 1 and the 2. And then good size all around, so discard, indirect, and then also a resource. If you run him at 16, you can pair him with, I believe, 2 First Order Stormtroopers, 2 7-point characters. You could roll in maybe 2 battle droids with him. So a bunch of indirect damage on those guys. And then I believe you would have a couple points left over to use with a plot. I'm really interested in looking forward to using Tarkin. Maybe like even like Elite Tarkin and a single Thrawn maybe could be an interesting deck. Or you could do Elite Thrawn, single Tarkin. I like that they've kind of got that point system set up that way. So you get Tarkin at 17 for Elite, and you can roll in single Tarkin, Elite Thrawn, or Elite Tarkin, single Thrawn, and just have focus for days, essentially. Good resources on each of those characters as well. And then this really cool power action that lets you essentially remove dice that you might not normally use, or like in like it could be situational where there's a symbol that you just can't resolve, or if you do, it'll have no effect. So you might as well remove them. Once per round, you get to remove 2 of them and deal 4 indirect. So that is Tarkin, Grand Moff. Really, just this set is just insane right now. So really looking forward to what other cards are shown. But we still got a bunch more to go through. But that's Tarkin, and he looks really cool. So we're going to move into our next card. And speaking of Grand Moff, we now have the Grand Moff upgrade title. 4 resources, Villain Red, unique red character only. 2 indirect damage, 3 indirect damage, 2 focus, 3 focus, 2 discard, 2 resources, and a power action. So use the claim ability on the battlefield or switch the battlefield with a battlefield that is not being used but was brought to the game. So no blanks on this thing. 2 damage sides, insane amounts of focus, huge, pretty big sides for resources and discard. And then this ability to either get the battlefield effect on the battlefield that's being used, or just switch out the battlefield. So you're not on a battlefield that you don't want to be on, you just power action and go to the other battlefield. And then in the next round, you can go back to the other battlefield, or use it to get the claim ability. So for this card seems just really strong to me. Or it's kind of expensive, but there's definitely ways to get this out for cheaper if you put something else on and override, or just have a ton of resources. Like again, if you have this on Tarkin or Thrawn in a Tarkin Thrawn deck, you're gonna be making quite a bit of money. Or if you have this on a another red character and maybe Unkar, it's got to go into a unique red. But good resources on it. You should be able to get out a bunch of other stuff on this as well. Insane amount of, you can just focus for days essentially. You play this on again Thrawn or Tarkin, just have even more and more focus to just focus to essentially whatever you need. So that is Grand Moff. Looks insane. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Finn, Soldier of Necessity. 11 health, 12 or 16 points. 2 range damage, plus 2 range damage, 3 indirect damage, resource, special, and blank. Special, move 1 damage from a card to another card in play, this ignores shields. So this is pretty interesting. So there are, now we'll get to some of these cards later in the video, but supports that you can place damage onto, to like block damage and that kind of thing, or like the resistance bomber. Once you resolve one of the dice, you put a damage counter on the resistance bomber. So this allows you to move damage tokens off of those supports, or looks like even other characters, and deal damage that way, or put more, like move your damage around in a way that you can, protect other characters, move it to another, move it to one of your opponent's characters, and so on. So you're going to essentially and this also just ignores shield. So if you have, let's say, something like a drop zone and you don't feel like exhausting it, you can move one of the damage off of that onto an opponent's character. You can move damage off of the resistance bomber and a few other things. So it looks like 4 damage sides if you count the special, because the special is removing it to an opponent is doing damage to them. So you have the two range side, again modified, 3 indirect, resource. So pretty good sides overall. I'm going to see interested to see who he can pair with. But I really like the ability to move damage off of this, especially because it now becomes unblockable. He's got 11 and again 12, 16 for Finn. So he looks pretty interesting. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Rose, Skilled Mechanic. 9 health, 8 or 11 points, so you have 1 more health than her normal die cost, which is pretty cool. So 2 indirect damage, 1 disrupt, 1 discard, 2 specials, and a blank. Special. Gain 1 resource, you may remove 1 damage from a support. So as I talked with Finn with Resistance Bomber, whenever you resolve that die, you place damage on the Resistance Bomber, and once it has 3 damage on it, you discard that support from play. So with her special, you'll be able to gain a resource and remove one of those damage counters off of that support, which is pretty cool. So you'll be able to keep the Rebel Bomber out longer, and then also get a resource in the process. And I'm not really I don't really know a whole lot about this character. We'll see more about it with her when Last Jedi comes out next week. But it looks like she's again a mechanic, so she's going to be able to essentially kind of repair ships and other things. So if you have let's say a damage counter on a droid, she'll be able to remove that. If you have a damage counter on the bomber, she'll be able to remove that. And her dice are pretty interesting. So you have 2 indirect on her. Then you have disrupt, discard, and these 2 specials, which will let you heal your supports and get resources. And I really like her cost. So at 811 for 9 health, that's really cool as well. So That is Rose, Skilled Mechanic. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have 3 Steps Ahead, Villain Red Event, 3 resources. Take up to 3 additional actions. Really interesting. So it looks like you basically pay 3, get 3 actions, so you can roll out a character, roll out another character, and resolve it. I really like this idea of this card in maybe a General Hux deck, where you could trigger his special. Let's say you have 3 characters, you get this out for free, but you take your 3 additional actions, roll in, and resolve. Or if you have another way to decrease the event cost or get it played for free, like with Hux's special, this could be pretty interesting. Pretty simple, basically, just 3 additional actions. Really like the card, really like the artwork. Was kind of hoping this would have been the Thrawn artwork, or maybe they'll do a promo of Thrawn with this artwork. Really think it's cool art on that, and a cool effect on this card. Again, kind of expensive, but if you can get a way to work it to where you can get it for less resources or even for free, it could be pretty interesting, because I like the fact that you can just, let's say, activate a support, resolve the, if it's like a vehicle deck, resolve range damage, and maybe defeat a character or something like that. So that is 3 steps ahead. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Final Moment, 4 resources, Hero Red Event. Ready each of your characters. After the action phase ends, you lose the game. Could be a really risky card, especially if your opponent plays something like Hyperspace Jump is after you do this, and then your game would just be over. But really cool card, artwork from Rogue One. Like if you just need to win in this particular round, you can ready all your characters. Let's say your opponent is down to 1 character and they only have like a couple health left. And you are completely rolled out. Your supports are exhausted. All the characters are exhausted. You can either maybe claim the battlefield or do this. Pay 4 resources, ready all your characters, and then just roll them back in. Really interesting ability if you do it after your opponent's already claimed. So your opponent claims, and if you have 4 resources, or again, a way to get this out for less or get it out for free, let's actually say you have 2 resources, and you play Our Only Hope, which lets you draw a card, and then you can play it for free, or let me see what it did. Play it for free or discard it to gain 2 resources. Let's say you know this is on the top of your deck. Let's say you played a card that lets you kind of put stuff at the top or arrange stuff in a certain way. You play Our Only Hope, draw this, play it for free, ready your characters. Again, if you do this after they've claimed, be able to ready all your characters and just roll in and potentially win the game. And if you don't win the game in that with this card, then you lose the game as soon as the action round ends. Really interesting, really risky though. So like I said, I probably wouldn't play this in against a deck that was playing yellow, unless maybe they've already claimed the battlefield. Because if they, like I said, if they hyperspace jump or just play something else to end the action phase, you're going to lose the game. So really interesting card. We're going to move into our next one. Next up, we have Mend. 2 resources, Hero Red Event. Heal 3 damage from a character or remove 3 damage from a support. Pretty simple, kind of like Field Medic, costs 1 more, and it heals 3 damage, or if you have a support that has a bunch of damage on it, you can remove that damage. I don't think this will work with the Bomber though, because it says once the Bomber hits 3, it gets discarded. So you can remove up to 3 damage, it looks like. Pretty simple, 2 resources, heal 3 or remove 3 damage. Might see play, I'm not really sure. But that is Mend. We're going to move into our next card. Next up, we have Suppression Field. 2 resources, Hero Red Support. Discard this support if it has 3 or more damage on it. As an action, you can exhaust this support, remove a die showing damage, either ranged, melee, or indirect. Place damage on the support equal to the value showing on that die. So this is where kind of Rose comes in, where Finn comes in. As long as it has less than 3, you can use their abilities or their specials to move damage off of this. Or Rose can heal a damage off of it, and Finn will be able to move a damage off of it onto something else. So it gets rid of a die, which is cool. And then you place damage on this equal to that. Again, you might want to do it with something that costs 3. So if you're playing this with Finn, you're not going to... If you put 3 on it, you're going to have to discard it. But let's say that 3 damage is all they have, and you can basically just put that on here and discard that card. I see this card being interesting against like a Palpatine deck. Let's say Palpatine rolls out his 3 range damage. You have this out already. You remove Palpatine's die and discard this card, and then you are getting rid of his range damage, and it's a die that he can't resolve to have you spread 2 damage between your characters. So really interesting support here. Really like the idea of having 2 damage on it and then using Thin or Rose to either heal or move damage off. So that is Suppression Field. We're going to move into our next card. And next up we have Crackdown. 0 resources, neutral red event. Play only if each of an opponent's characters has 1 or more damage on them. Gain a resource. So if you're doing a lot of indirect damage or running a deck that does a lot of indirect, this could be a good way to get a resource. Just basically play this, get a resource. I think there's probably better ways to get resources, but I really like that it costs 0. Not sure if people will actually be running this or not, just because it takes up a card slot in your deck, and then you're only able to use it if your opponent has at least 1 damage on all of their characters. So if you're playing against, let's say, a Battle Droid deck, each of those Battle Droids is going to have damage, or you're going to have to have 1 damage on 6 different characters. So depending on like what you play against, this may be more or less useful. If you play against Palpatine, you only need to have 1 damage on him to get this to work. Playing against a 2-character deck, you need to have 1 on each, and then so on and so forth. So that is Crackdown. That is the final card from the Fantasy Flight Red article. There'll be a link in the article where you can check that out below. Again, want to thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.